Let me tell you about a deal I almost lost. Not because my product was wrong, not because my price was too high, but because I walked into the room trying to be clever instead of trying to be useful. It was about 2 years ago. I had a meeting with a mid-sized logistics company. They were looking to upgrade their internal training system. I had something that could genuinely help them. I knew it could help them. And I walked in with a pitch deck full of features, a rehearsed script, and what I thought was a killer closing technique. You know the kind. The assumptive close. The "so when would you like to get started" move that every sales book tells you to master. I delivered the whole thing flawlessly. Timing was perfect. Slides were clean. I hit every talking point. And at the end, the decision maker, a woman named Karen, she looked at me across the table and said, "That was a very polished presentation. But I still don't know why I should trust you." And she was right. I had spent 45 minutes telling her what my product could do. I had spent 0 minutes understanding what she actually needed. I had spent 0 minutes showing her that I understood her world, her pain, her risk. I had performed. I had not connected. And in high-ticket sales, that difference is everything. Now I want to be clear about what I mean when I say high-ticket. I'm not just talking about expensive products. I'm talking about any transaction where the stakes are high, where the buyer is putting significant resources on the line, whether that's money, time, reputation, or organizational trust. In those situations, the rules of the game change completely, and most salespeople never figure that out. They keep applying low-ticket tactics to high-ticket conversations and then wonder why they can't close. So today I want to talk about what actually drives high-ticket sales, not the techniques, not the scripts, not the funnel hacks, the real thing underneath all of it. And I'm going to share with you the three forces that I've found through my own experience, through my own failures, and through studying people far smarter than me that truly move the needle when the deal is big and the buyer is serious. The first force is trust, but not the shallow kind, not the "I seem like a nice person" kind. I'm talking about deep, structural trust. The kind Charlie Munger talks about when he says that the best way to get what you want is to deserve what you want. Munger built an entire philosophy around this idea. He didn't chase deals. He didn't manipulate people into agreements. He made himself so reliably competent, so consistently honest, so genuinely invested in the outcome for the other side, that trust became inevitable. It wasn't a tactic. It was a byproduct of character. And that's the part most people miss. They think trust is something you build with rapport tricks. Mirror the client's body language. Use their name 3 times in the first 2 minutes. Find a common interest and mention it casually. And look, those things aren't harmful, but they are surface level. They are decoration on a house that has no foundation. And when you're asking someone to write a check for $50,000 or $200,000 or to commit their organization to a multi-year partnership, decoration doesn't cut it. They need to feel in their bones that you are who you say you are, that you can deliver what you promise, and that you will still be there when things get difficult. Because things always get difficult. I think about Naval Ravikant's concept of specific knowledge. The idea that every person has a unique intersection of skills, experiences, and insights that can't be easily replicated or taught. In high-ticket sales, your specific knowledge is what makes you trustworthy, not because you can recite product specs, but because you've lived in the space long enough, you've solved enough real problems, you've failed enough real failures that your understanding carries weight. People can feel the difference between someone who has read about their industry and someone who has bled in it. And when the stakes are high, they only want to work with someone who has bled in it. After that meeting with Corinne, I went home and I sat with it. My ego was bruised. I wanted to blame her. I wanted to say she just didn't get it, she wasn't ready, she was too skeptical. But deep down I knew. I knew I had walked in there wearing a mask, the mask of the polished salesperson, and she saw right through it, not because she was unusually perceptive, but because when someone is about to make a high-stakes decision, their perception sharpens. They're not just listening to your words, they're reading your intention. They're feeling for alignment between what you say and who you are. And if there's a gap, even a small one, they pull back. Every time. So what did I do? I sent her an email, not a follow-up pitch, not a just checking in message. I sent her an honest note. I said, "Corinne, I think I did a poor job in our meeting. I focused too much on presenting and not enough on listening. If you're open to it, I'd like to have a different kind of conversation. No slides, no pitch, just a real discussion about what you're dealing with and whether I can actually help." She replied within an hour. She said yes. That second meeting was completely different. I walked in with nothing but a notebook and genuine curiosity, and something remarkable happened. For the first time, I actually heard what she was saying, not just the words. The anxiety underneath the words. She was worried about her team. She had 32 salespeople, and half of them were underperforming. She'd already tried 2 different training platforms and both had failed. Not because the platforms were bad, but because nobody on her team actually used them after the first month. The problem wasn't information. The problem was engagement. The problem was that her people didn't feel supported in the daily grind of selling. They felt judged, measured, and ultimately alone. And as she talked, I realized something. I realized that what I had was not just a tool, it was a companion. The AI system I'd built wasn't a training platform in the traditional sense. It was designed to sit with a salesperson every single day, to help them process what happened, to analyze their conversations, to reflect on their interactions with clients, to build their resilience over time. It wasn't about teaching them scripts. It was about growing them as people. And that was exactly what Corinne needed. But I never would have understood that if I hadn't shut up and listened. This brings me to the second force that drives high-ticket sales, and it might be the most underrated one. Insight. Real insight. Not the manufactured kind you get from reading a blog post and regurgitating it in a meeting. I'm talking about the ability to see something about a client's situation that they haven't seen themselves. The ability to connect dots that nobody else has connected. The ability to walk into a room and, after truly listening, offer a perspective that shifts how they think about their own problem. This is what separates a salesperson from a trusted advisor. A salesperson tells you about their product. A trusted advisor tells you about yourself. And when someone reveals something true about your situation that you hadn't articulated, something clicks, something opens. You think, this person gets it. This person sees what I'm dealing with. And that feeling, that moment of being truly understood, is more persuasive than any pitch deck ever created. Munger used to talk about the importance of having a latticework of mental models, different frameworks from different disciplines that you can apply to understand complex situations. That's what insight is in sales. It's the ability to bring a multidimensional understanding to a client's problem, not just understanding the product, not just understanding the industry, but understanding the psychology of the decision maker, the dynamics of the organization, the pressures they face that they might not even be talking about, the fears they have about making the wrong choice, the politics within their team that could derail any initiative, no matter how good it is. When I sat with Corinne in that second meeting, I didn't just hear her problem. I saw the whole picture. I saw that she was a leader who cared deeply about her people but felt increasingly powerless to help them. I saw that she was under pressure from above to improve numbers, but knew that pressure alone wouldn't change behavior. I saw that what she really needed wasn't a technology solution. She needed proof that someone understood the human dimension of her challenge. And that's what I gave her. Not a feature list, not a ROI calculation, a reflection of her own situation that she hadn't been able to articulate to herself. I said to her, Corinne, it sounds like the real issue isn't that your team doesn't know how to sell. It's that they don't have a space where they can be honest about what's not working. They perform for you because you're their boss. They perform for the CRM because it tracks them. But nobody is sitting with them at the end of a hard day and saying, tell me what really happened in that call. Let's figure it out together. She got quiet, and then she nodded. And I could see in her face that something had shifted, not because I was clever, but because I had seen her clearly. This is the thing about insight. You can't fake it. You can't manufacture it in a brainstorming session or pull it from a template. It comes from genuine engagement with the other person's world. It comes from caring enough to go deep. It comes from having done the work, lived the experience, felt the struggle yourself. And that's where Naval's idea of specific knowledge comes back in. My specific knowledge, my unique intersection, is that I've been on both sides. I've been the salesperson struggling to close. I've been the technologist building tools. I've been the person trying to sell themselves in a market that doesn't know them yet. That intersection gives me a perspective that someone who's only been a product manager or only been a consultant simply doesn't have. And in high-ticket sales, that kind of dimensional understanding is your greatest asset. Now, let me get to the third force, and this is where most people really go wrong. Value presentation. And I'm very deliberate in calling it presentation, not proposition, because a value proposition is a static thing. It's a sentence on your website. It's a line in your pitch. But value presentation is alive. It's dynamic. It's the act of making someone feel the value, not just understand it intellectually. Here's what I mean. After that second meeting with Corinne, I could have sent her a proposal with pricing, features, and a timeline. That's what most people do. Instead, I asked her if she'd be willing to let me work with 3 of her salespeople for 2 weeks, no charge, no commitment. I said, let me show you what this looks like in practice. Let your people experience it, and then you tell me if it's worth continuing. She agreed. During those 2 weeks, I set up the AI coaching system for 3 of her reps. One was a top performer who was plateauing. One was a mid-performer who was struggling with confidence. And one was a new hire who was completely overwhelmed. Every day, each of them spent 15 to 20 minutes with the AI, reviewing their calls, talking through objections they'd faced, analyzing what they could have done differently, processing the emotional weight of rejection and uncertainty. It wasn't a lecture. It was a conversation, a daily practice of reflection and growth. At the end of 2 weeks, something had happened that no pitch could have predicted. The top performer had broken through her plateau. Not because she learned a new technique, but because the daily reflection helped her identify a pattern she'd been blind to. She was rushing past discovery because she was so eager to prove her competence. Once she saw it, she slowed down, and her close rate went up immediately. The mid-performer had gained visible confidence. He told Corinne that for the first time in months, he didn't dread Monday morning. And the new hire, she said the AI felt like having a mentor who was always available and never judgmental. She said it was the first time since starting the job that she felt like she could actually do this. Corinne called me after those 2 weeks. She didn't ask about pricing. She didn't ask about features. She said, "How fast can we roll this out to the whole team?" That's value presentation. It's not telling someone what you can do. It's showing them. It's letting them experience the transformation, not the product. And in high-ticket sales, this is critical because the buyer isn't just purchasing a thing. They're purchasing a future state. They're purchasing a version of their world that's better than the current one. And if you can make them taste that future state, even briefly, the sale becomes almost inevitable. Not because you pressured them, not because you used some psychological trick, but because they want the future they just experienced. Munger said something that I think about constantly. He said, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." In high-ticket sales, the incentive for the buyer isn't a discount or a bonus or a limited-time offer. The incentive is clarity. The incentive is relief. The incentive is the feeling that finally someone understands their problem and has a real solution. When you provide that, the price becomes secondary. Not irrelevant, but secondary. Because they've already made the emotional decision. The rational mind just needs enough justification to feel comfortable saying yes. Let me tell you how that deal with Corinne ended. She rolled out the system to her full team. The contract was substantial. It was the largest deal I had closed at that point. But more important than the deal itself was what happened afterward. Over the next 6 months, her team's performance improved measurably. Their confidence grew. Their client relationships deepened. Their retention rate went up. And Corinne became not just a client but an advocate. She referred me to 2 other companies. Those referrals led to more relationships, more trust, more opportunities. And here's the thing I want you to sit with. None of that happened because I had a great closing technique. None of it happened because I ran a sophisticated marketing funnel. None of it happened because I discounted my price to win the business. It happened because I showed up with genuine curiosity, offered real insight, and made the value tangible before asking for a single dollar. This is what I mean when I talk about high-ticket sales being fundamentally different from low-ticket transactional selling. In a low-ticket environment, volume is king. You optimize for impressions, clicks, conversions. You play a numbers game. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a completely different sport. High-ticket sales is a relationship sport. It's a depth sport. It's a sport where the quality of your understanding matters infinitely more than the quantity of your outreach. I think a lot of people, especially in the age of AI and automation, are confused about this. They think technology can replace the human elements of high-value selling. And yes, technology can enhance it. I use AI every day. I built an AI coaching system for goodness sake. But technology is a tool, not a strategy. The strategy is human. The strategy is about showing up as someone worth trusting, seeing what others miss, and making value real before you ask for commitment. AI can help you process information faster, prepare better, follow up more consistently. But it can't replace the moment when you look someone in the eye, whether on a video call or across a table, and they feel in their gut that you are the right person to solve their problem. Naval talks about how the most valuable skills in the modern economy are the ones that can't be automated, the ones that require judgment, creativity, and accountability. High-ticket selling is exactly that. It requires the judgment to know when to push and when to pull back. It requires the creativity to see a client's problem from an angle they haven't considered. And it requires the accountability to own the outcome, to stand behind your solution not just until the contract is signed, but through the messy, unpredictable process of implementation. I want to share something personal here because I think it matters. I used to be terrified of high-ticket conversations, not because I didn't believe in what I was selling, but because I was afraid of being rejected at that level. When the stakes are small, rejection stings. When the stakes are big, rejection feels like a judgment on your entire worth as a professional. And so I would unconsciously sabotage myself. I'd underprice. I'd over-explain. I'd fill silence with nervous chatter instead of letting the conversation breathe. I'd avoid asking for the commitment because I didn't want to hear no. What changed? Honestly, it was a shift in how I thought about the whole dynamic. I stopped thinking of high-ticket sales as a performance and started thinking of it as a service. I stopped asking myself, how do I close this deal? And started asking, how do I help this person make the best decision for their organization? That subtle shift changed everything. Because when you're trying to close, you're operating from need. Your energy is grasping, desperate, self-oriented. But when you're trying to serve, you're operating from abundance. Your energy is calm, generous, other-oriented. And ironically, that's exactly the energy that makes people want to buy. Munger has this wonderful idea about inversion, solving problems by thinking about them backward. Instead of asking, how do I make this sale? Ask, What would guarantee that I lose this sale? And the answers are obvious. Lose it by not listening. Lose it by making the conversation about yourself. Lose it by failing to understand the client's real pain. Lose it by presenting a generic solution instead of a tailored one. Lose it by pressuring instead of serving. Lose it by treating the client as a target instead of a human being. When you invert the question, the path forward becomes crystal clear. There's one more dimension of this that I think deserves attention, and it's something I've been reflecting on a lot lately. In high-ticket sales, you are the product. I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I mean that the client isn't just evaluating your solution. They're evaluating you, your judgment, your reliability, your depth of understanding, your character. In a high-ticket engagement, they're going to be working with you, possibly for months or years. They need to trust not just what you're selling, but who you are. And this is where the concept of selling yourself takes on a very different meaning from what most people think. Selling yourself isn't about self-promotion. It's not about building a personal brand based on hype and highlights. It's about being so genuinely good, so genuinely thoughtful, so genuinely invested in the other person's success, that your value becomes self-evident. It's about what Munger calls deserving, deserving the trust, deserving the deal, deserving the relationship. I'll be honest with you, I'm still growing in this. I don't have it all figured out. Every deal teaches me something new. Every conversation reveals a blind spot, but I've come to believe that the growth itself is the value. Because when a client sees that you're someone who is genuinely evolving, genuinely learning, genuinely trying to get better at serving them, that creates a kind of trust that no polished presentation can match. People don't trust perfection. They trust authenticity. They trust effort. They trust someone who is honest about what they know and what they don't. Let me bring this full circle. What really drives high-ticket sales? Three things. Trust, and not the superficial rapport-building kind, but the deep, earned, character-driven kind. The kind that comes from being genuinely competent and genuinely honest. The kind where the client doesn't just believe you because you said something convincing, but believes you because everything about how you show up is consistent and real. Insight, the ability to see the client's situation more clearly than they see it themselves. To connect the dots they haven't connected. To offer a perspective that shifts their understanding of their own problem. This comes from specific knowledge, from lived experience, from caring enough to go deep instead of staying on the surface. And value presentation, the ability to make the transformation tangible before the transaction. To let the client taste the future state. To show, not tell. To demonstrate that what you offer isn't a product but a meaningful change in their world. Those three forces, trust, insight, and value presentation, they work together. You can't have one without the others. Insight without trust is just unsolicited advice. Trust without insight is a nice relationship with no business value. And value presentation without trust and insight is just a fancy demo that doesn't connect. When all three are present, something powerful happens. The conversation stops being about whether the client should buy. It becomes about how to move forward together. The dynamic shifts from seller and buyer to partners. The price becomes a detail, not an obstacle, and the relationship extends far beyond the initial transaction into something that generates value for years. I think about Corinne often, not because she was my biggest deal, although she was at the time, but because she taught me something I'll never forget. She taught me that the best clients, the ones worth serving, the ones who will change your business, they're not looking for the best pitch. They're looking for the person who sees them, really sees them, their challenges, their fears, their aspirations, the weight they carry that nobody else in their organization understands. When you become that person, you don't need closing techniques. You don't need pressure tactics. You don't need to compete on price. You've already won. Not the deal, something more important. Their trust. And trust, real trust, is the most valuable currency in business. It compounds like nothing else. Every deal built on genuine trust creates the foundation for the next one. Every client who truly trusts you becomes an ambassador for your work. And over time, you stop chasing business. Business starts finding you. Not because you got lucky, not because you went viral, but because you built something that can't be faked and can't be automated. A reputation for being someone who delivers real value to the people who matter. That's what drives high-ticket sales. And honestly, that's what drives everything worth building. Thanks for spending your time here today. I genuinely appreciate it. If this resonated with you, feel free to share it, leave a comment, or follow along wherever you connect with content. I'll see you in the next one.